You're welcome to this series of corporate governance and governance as a whole. So, we are broadly talking about ethics and leadership and how it has been evolved and where it is leading to. So, the very first thing I would like to ask how you have seen this governance evolve over the period of time.
You see, to really understand governance, we need to understand a little bit of human history. For a long time, human development has focused on conquering somebody. People go into a country, whether it is British coming to India or Americans from Europe coming to America or Spanish coming to Latin America, or people going to Africa and capturing people and bringing them as slaves. So the human history is based on winning, conquering, and taking advantage of somebody. That has been going on for a long, long time. It is only now in the last 50, 70 years that we are talking about little more equality, little more equity. I mean, even in America, women couldn't vote. Even in America, blacks had no rights. Even in India today, Harijans can't go to temple. So I think inequality has been built into the past history. That inequality essentially has focused on two fundamental issues world over: power and profit. Business schools also teach you more about how to optimize profit, how to lead so you keep power in position. So everywhere, mindset is to optimize profit and power, productivity, efficiency, cost reductions, market share, business models, monetization. All of these ideas are focused on profit. Whenever there is a movement to distribute power, to normalize profit, it has been fought by people in position of power, vested interest. Basically, what they are saying is, I don't want to share. And today we celebrate 100 richest men in the world. We don't celebrate 100 best teachers in the world, 100 best doctors in the world, 100 best activists in the world. There is no such list. Then people come up with list of most powerful people in the world. So I think the whole mindset in the past has been based on dominance of handful of people over a large number of people. So inequality is a natural outcome of all of that. Okay. It is only recently, because of the rise of information culture, knowledge has been democratized. So it is only recently that people like us talk about these issues. 100 years ago, 50 years ago, no one talked about these issues because you had no access to a lot of this information and knowledge, because information was locked up in libraries, in reports, which was accessible to privileged few. For example, very few people know about the richest families who are not well known, like Rothschild. They control huge amount of wealth. Wealth is only controlled by America and some part of Europe. It is only recently that Chinese have accumulated wealth, that some Indians have accumulated wealth. It's a recent phenomena. Okay. But there also, the culture promoted is that of power and profit. So even in China, you have very few rich at the cost of a lot of poor. Even in India, you have handful of billionaires. So that model is respected, promoted, and then the rich in India, China, and other countries all come together, which rich in Western countries. So there is a club where rich communicate with rich, network with rich, look at the economic forum, where all the rich of the world come together and basically make deal. But they talk about poverty. They don't mean perhaps what they say, and they don't say what they mean. So I'm not blaming anybody. I'm saying the history of development in the world tells us, at least someone like me, very clearly that this is a natural phenomena that we have as mankind promoted. And there isn't much you and I can do except bring it to people's awareness, but we also don't do that. We also go to, best of the best MBA schools, and we are also taught about how to take advantage. It is more about how to extract value than how to create value. Okay. So when you extract value, you tend to concentrate wealth. Very few people create value. And those who create value get taken advantage of. So first, we must understand that this inequality has been with us from the time of Maharajas, dynasties in China, Maharajas in India, queens and kings in Europe, and group of people from Europe who came to America, fought with locals, killed them, acquired their land, and said, we have conquered. Now it is our land. Same thing happened in Latin America. Spaniards came with their swords and horses, killed Aztec and local people, and said, now we are rich. The gold is ours, land is ours, silver is ours, mines are ours. So this is the history. I believe personally, we are at a very important point in human history, because for the first time in human history, we are all connected. This never happened. So I have been asking this question, saying, what does this connectivity mean to human civilization? Unfortunately, connectivity today is used again to concentrate wealth. Whether it is Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Apple, or whatever. They have used this connectivity to concentrate wealth as opposed to distribute wealth. It is not in their interest to distribute wealth. Why should they distribute? Okay, because they have been told that it is better to be rich. Okay. But the connectivity is all about empowering individual. A person sitting in Nasik has access to the rest of the world. It never happened before. You could be settled in Nasik, working in America for a company from Europe and getting paid in Japan and spend money in Brazil. This has never happened in the human history. So what does it really mean to have connectivity of this type? I don't think we understand it yet. To me, this connectivity brings about democratization of information, decentralization of decision-making, and demonetization of services. So now it is possible to think of a different model of development. But we are not thinking of different model of development. We are using technology for the same model of development. So startups, venture capitalists, valuation, stock market, unicorns, all these are symbols of the old way of thinking. But then people like me who talk like this don't get hearing. I'm outcasted. I'm outcasted by my own colleagues saying, what are you talking about? You should have made $10 billion. Since you didn't make $10 billion, you can't be too smart. Okay? If you're smart, how come you're not rich? Is the mindset. What world needs today, according to me, is Gandhian model of development. But it is considered old, obsolete. Gandhi is not seen as the thought leader. Gandhi is today not in the category of philosophers, great thinkers, who I think he was. Okay. He was seen only as a freedom fighter who got freedom to India and divided India. But if you go deep in Gandhian values and thoughts, Gandhi is more relevant today than ever in the history of this world. So in business, truth is not celebrated. Lies are celebrated. In business, trust has no place. Anything you do, you need 15 lawyers and 13 accountants. And what they tell me is mistrust. For you and I to do any business, I got to have 15 agreements with you. Shareholder agreement, this agreement, that agreement, because it's mistrust. For me, in Gandhian terms, equality is important. Respect, dignity, not based on what you have accomplished, but based on who you are. I mean, look at what is going on in India today. It bothers me because it is all based on inequality. On one hand, we talk about Hindutva. On the other hand, we ignore Dalits and scheduled caste and scheduled tribe and tribals. They are also human beings. What are we doing for them? So I personally believe that to be able to address these questions that you ask, the fundamental question, you need to redesign the world. And I recently wrote a book called Redesign the World. Okay. Though this is not the answer to everything, but it's a thought to start a new conversation. You cannot have the conversation you and I plan to have in old framework. Old framework will continue to promote inequality, will continue to promote concentration of wealth, will continue to promote, celebration of rich. Okay. How do you break that? It's not a very easy thing to do. Okay. It may not happen in my lifetime. So going back to Gandhiji talked about trusteeship. Gandhiji talked about decentralization, localization, bottom-up development, as opposed to top-down. Everything today is top-down. Prime Minister's office makes all the decisions. Rich business control all the businesses. In every sector you go, there is a rich guy controlling, so little guy can't make any difference. There's no way you can fight them, because if you fight them, they'll put huge amount of money and buy you out, or crash you, and which is considered smart, which is considered management strategy, and all kinds of rich consultants work with you on that. And then you are celebrated. Okay. So it's a very complicated issue. If there was a way to say that enough is enough at $1 billion or 100 million or 5 billion, and say after that wealth belongs to community, what do you do with $1 billion? Where do you spend? So you have $1 billion home, you have $500 million, ship or yacht and all that. Okay. But people don't want to stop. How many companies says, I will reduce my profit, but I will increase benefit to people? Because then your people will become rich. Okay. If Apples of the world have, let's say, $100 billion cash, can that be used for the welfare of their employees, their stakeholders, and not their shareholders? No, they won't do it. Okay. So fundamental values are in wrong place. That's according to me. According to them, I'm talking rubbish. And what they are doing is the right thing to do. So we have a disconnect. Yeah. If the goal is to distribute wealth and lift people at the bottom of the economic pyramid, there is enough wealth in the world. This thinking comes from the fact that we lived so far in the economy of scarcity. Everything was in short supply. Telephones, cars, scooters, bicycles, you name it. Now, all of a sudden, we live in a world of abundance. We can produce anything. Look, long time ago, people thought that India will not be able to feed 500, 600 million people. India was considered a basket case. Today, India can feed 1.5 billion and we have surplus food. So we live in economy of surplus. We can produce anything. Shoes, shirts, homes, you name it. But we wind up producing for the people who can afford to buy and not for the people who need it. So the price of Louis Vuitton share goes up because they can afford to buy. They can afford to buy a $100,000 watch. So we produce for them. They can afford to buy, $2,000 shoes. So we produce for them. So we have to really decide what is that we want to produce. For whom do we want to produce? At what cost we want to produce? So the mindset has to shift from economy of scarcity to economy of surplus. These are all weird way of looking at things. I've thought through a lot of this personally, but I'm not an economist. I'm not a politician. I'm not very well known world over. Okay. Mainly because I'm not in position of power and profit. Yeah. These thoughts are basically Gandhian way of thinking. I was brought up in that environment. And I believe as a technocrat, Gandhi had the answers. How do we bring Gandhi into the mainstream of thought today? So trusteeship is a classical example. If you say that after $1 billion of profit for an individual, everything should go in a trust, which is for the public good. But who will manage the trust? How would you say it is public good? Okay. So if you go through this logic, ultimately you boil everything down to character of people, character of leader, what they value. Today, there is a crisis of leadership in the world. There is a crisis of leadership in the world at political level, at economic level, social level, because everybody is trying to optimize not for larger public good, but for narrow personal goods. Could be family, could be relations, could be constituency, could be business partner, but not larger public good. So in this book, I talk about the fact that until we change our mindset from power and profit to planet and people, you can't do much. So everything we do, we must ask a different question. Today, everything we do, we ask only two questions. Does it help in my power position? Does it help in my profit? I optimize those two. I need to flip that. And I said, everything I do, I should ask a question. Is it good for planet or bad for planet? If it is good for planet, I should do it. If it is bad for planet, I shouldn't do it. I have to ask another question. Is it good for people or bad for people? If it is good for people, I must do it. If it is bad for people, any people, not just your people, don't do it. So this is a very long answer to your very simple question. My apology.
Yes, sir. Very well said and very well thought. It's very eye-opening. So you talk about the mindset, and you also talked about, people are talking about at the top level, or you refer a few names like they want to connect the world, but they are not doing it actually, at a ground level. So what do you see the hurdle walking the talk?
Self-interest. Self-interest. Okay. I mean, it's obvious everywhere. Whether you look at why is America supporting Ukraine war? Why would anybody support any war for that matter? Okay. And the answer is clear. It's for self-interest. Either to promote your own strategy, to guard your own profit. Why did US go into Iraq? What was the need for US to go into Vietnam? Yeah. I mean, not just US, but you look at the history. How did World War I start? How did World War II start? Yeah. So everywhere it is self-interest. I mean, recently I was watching when Modi came here to America. Okay. No one talked about Indian democracy. Everyone talked about deals we were making. We made a deal on defense, we made a deal on aeroplanes, and we did this and we did that. And it was all basically orchestrated around transactions. Everything is transaction. It is not about a process, about values, about fundamentals. So the world works on transactions. I give you this, you give me something else. Okay. And then we celebrate transaction. So that's the world we live in. Okay.
When you say redesign the world, and you also talk about values, the Gandhian philosophy, then how we can have this not like a transaction or money oriented, but a very value driven governance?
First, you need to have a global conversation on it. It may take 3 to 5 years to have this conversation. It's not easy. This also cannot be a transaction. This also has to be part of a process. People say, give me a solution in 3 minutes. There is no such thing in life. Okay. There are no sound bites for this. It takes long time to change the direction of development. So first thing is we need a global conversation on saying, hey, stop it. We are at crossroads. We are at crossroads because of hyperconnectivity, AI, all of these things. Are we going to use AI to do the same thing we have done in the past? If that's the case, there'll be more theft. There'll be more crooked people. There'll be more cyber attacks. Okay. Or you want to use AI to take humanity to the next level. What is our definition of humanity at the next level? Eradicate poverty, hunger, war, environmental blunders. Now let's see what we need to do. For that, you need broader global conversation. We need enough people who buy into this conversation. Today, there are people who buy into this conversation. You know, if I write an article on this, nobody will even publish it. Okay, there's this crazy idea. But if I talk about how to be a billionaire, 10 people will publish that article. 10 steps to a billionaire is an article everybody will publish. Okay, how to be a unicorn company. What should startup do to optimize profit? All these topics sell. Okay. And then you get invited to business school presentation, everybody claps and you get a little plaque. Okay. All these things go on. So you're really talking about a totally new conversation. Until you have that conversation, there is no awareness. Until you have awareness, there is no proposal. And if there is no proposal, there is no agreement. We need 8, 10, 5 countries to begin new conversation. Meaningful countries. It can't be some island country. But if 3 or 4 meaningful countries, you see what happened after World War II. Very few people realized that after World War II, world had to be redesigned because everything was destroyed. Europe was in ruin. Japan was in bad shape. So this has to be rebuilt. So America took a lead and said, we will redesign the world. So 4 or 5 people in America, in fact, really 3 people in America, worked out a plan, but America was the only power then. So they said, we'll create UN and it'll be in New York. So we can control it. We'll create World Bank. Head of World Bank has to be American. We'll create IMF. We'll give IMF to Europeans. We'll create WHO. We'll create WIPO. We'll create ultimately World Trade Organization. Okay. But we will control. Then world was bipolar. Soviet Union and US. That design was really put in place to promote democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. That design worked well for a while. It did rebuild Europe, Japan. Who would have thought that America, who fought against Nazi Hitler, would come and help Germany to rebuild Germany? It was a thought that no one could accept. But that's what was required. Okay. That design has survived 75 years. In 75 years, we have not built one new global institution. Not one. No business school talks about these things. No business school teaches this to you. Okay. How can you have a world where for 75 years, you haven't built one new global institution of that magnitude? And you continue with the same design. After that design, transistor was born. Look at the implication of transistor on the world. After that design, internet was born. Hyperconnectivity was provided. what is the implication of all of this on human civilization? President Kennedy comes in and says, I want to take man onto the moon. That was completely off the track goal. Okay. And that gave birth to Star Wars and all this technology. You need that kind of thinking. You don't have that kind of thinking today in the world. It's all incremental. All these leaders are petty, transaction-oriented, have no vision, and they can't be taken seriously because they have no credibility. Okay. That's where we are.